Welcome to the Rise of the Trades podcast, the show dedicated to helping you to build, grow, and scale your trades or construction business. All rise for your host, Craig Wilkinson.
Welcome to this week's coaching episode of the Rise of the Trades podcast, where we help trades and construction business owners to skyrocket leads, explode net profits without having to graft 60 hours a week and becoming that busy fool. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to create a vetting form to replace all them time wasters and those tire kickers with pre-qualified leads. But before we go there, I just want to announce that if you've not already heard, we've launched our members priority waiting list for you to get exclusive access and become one of the founding members of our new Trades Freedom Club organisation, where we're going to be providing all the help, the support, the knowledge, the tools, the skills and the guidance to help you to grow your trades or construction business. The only way you're going to get an invite to become one of the founding members is by adding yourself to our members priority waiting list. The link to this waiting list can be found in the description and the show notes of this episode. Now, let's transition over to this week's coaching episode. Time is the most valuable currency we all have. And deep down we know that, but for many of us, and me back in the day, I used to waste and squander so much of my valuable time. You see, if you've been listening to my podcasts, you'll know that I keep drumming it into you that you've only got 168 hours in a week to fit absolutely everything that you do into 168 hours. Let's take work, for instance. Let's take running your own business. You're going to be wearing that many different hats. You're going to be doing that many different roles within your business, such as you're spending time pulling together all your marketing content and marketing your business. There's then the sales side of it, where you're trying to convert these leads into sales. You'll then go out and you'll do surveys at evenings and weekends and during day. From them site or home surveys, you come back and you do all your admin and your paperwork. You'll then price a job and spend time pricing it. And then you'll spend time being the bookkeeper, doing all your invoicing, creating all your deposits for your invoices, and you'll get them out. You'll be ordering materials. You'll be picking materials up for jobs. You'll be organising labour for jobs. You'll be dealing with the communication with your customers on every job. You'll be babysitting your team on your jobs. You'll be sorting out problems and putting fires out. Come on, the list goes on. Sometimes it can be utter chaos just in your business. And that's not all you do. That's just a few things that you do in your business. And all that lot we've got to fit into less than 168 hours. Why? Because on top of all that, you've all got a life, haven't you? Or you should have. And for many of you, you'll all have families. So spending the quality time that you know you should be spending with your husband or your wife or your partner. Or for those that have got kids, you know that kids are growing up too quick. In the blink of an eyelid, years have gone and all them memories that you should have been making have now disappeared. There'll be some of you sacrificing your kids' activities, such as your daughter's dance or gymnastics or your son's football training, because you're putting work before your kids. And what about you? What about the time for you? Because many of you had a hobby before you set up your business, didn't you? But now your business is controlling you and your time. You've given up on your hobbies. So you're starting to feel the fatigue. You're not as fit, you're not as healthy as you were before you had a business. You're not spending any time on you, investing into you. Are you with me? Now, all this lot, we've got to try and cram everything that we want to do, business-wise, family-wise, and personally-wise, into 168 hours. And if you're squandering and you're wasting your own time, you're going to get to the end of every week and you're going to have a to-do list still left as long as your arm. You're going to get to the end of the week and you've already behind, so you start the following week on the back foot because there's just not enough hours to get everything done. Now, if this sounds a little bit like you, I want you to go and check out podcast number 17, episode number 17. Because in episode number 17, I share with you 10 time management and productivity tips that's going to save you 25 hours a week. And if we understand that time is the most valuable currency, we need to be working on protecting as much time as we can so we can reinvest it back into our business or into our families and start to enjoy what it is that we're doing with our time. Now, talking about time, how much time are you wasting and have you wasted on people that want to steal your time, that don't value it, but they want to steal it for their own benefit? And you know what I'm talking about here. I call them time wasters and tire kickers. The people that make out as though they're interested in the product or service that you're offering, the people that want you to go out and do a site or home visit and spend all your time putting all these quotes together for their own benefit. And they haven't even got the decency to communicate with you to let you know whether you've won the job or you've not won it, leaving you feeling frustrated. And we've all been there. We've all done it, me included. And I had a very, very rude awakening to all of this. And let me just share a story with you and an experience that made me realise, hang on a minute, Craig, you cannot continue to do what you're doing now, which is wasting much time on time wasters and tire kickers, because your time is far too valuable. And I'm going to rewind probably back about 20 years. 20 years ago when I was that ultimate busy fool, and 20 years ago when I was doing what I call feed the beast. And what I mean by feeding the beast is you're starting to grow your business and you've now got subbies or employed members of staff that are working with you. So your team's starting to grow. And as your team starts to grow, you're going to need more leads. And then you've got to convert those leads into a sale, into a job. And that job is what feeds the beast. That's what feeds the business. And that's what provides the work for your team. Now, you might be in a position like I was back then, where I've got to continually feed this beast. I need the work, not just to keep me going, to keep my team going. So you get to a point where you know that you shouldn't be looking at every job that comes in, but because you've got to feed the beast and you're scared of running out of work and you know that you've got X amount of employees or subbies to keep going, you're constantly looking at jobs that deep down you should not even be looking at. Why? Because they're time wasters and the tire kickers. And that's exactly where I was at. And I want to share this story with you, and this is true. And I even remember the customer's name, and I'm going to say it because the likelihood of them 20 years later identifying themselves pretty slim. But I got an inquiry that came through on a Friday morning, and it was from Mrs. Murphy, and Mrs. Murphy were interested in a loft conversion. And that's what we'd started to niche down into, loft conversions. And at this time, leads had just started to dry up slightly. So when it came in, I'm like, brilliant. At least I've got some, leads coming in. I need to feed the beast. So I rang Mrs. Murphy Friday morning, had a 10-minute conversation with her over the phone about her loft conversion. And throughout that conversation, it materialised that she'd already had 2 quotes. She wanted a 3rd quote. And then they were going to make a decision the next week on who they were going to go with. Now, having built loft conversions for years and years and years and built extensions in my construction company, actually having somebody that's going to make a decision the following week from you giving them the quote was quite rare, because a lot of the times they'd got to gather the quotes, they'd got to send the quotes off to get a mortgage, they'd have to remortgage, because we're talking serious money here. So knowing that they were in a position to make a decision the following week, and knowing that I needed to feed the beast and leads had been a bit sparse, I'm thinking, bingo. So I said to her, okay, when's convenient for me to come and see you? And she said, can you come at Sunday at 6 p.m? And I'm like, flipping heck, another weekend that I've got to be disturbed because of work. But I'd got to feed the beast. I needed the work. So what did I do? Stupidly, I agreed to it and I booked it in to go out and survey at 6 p.m. on a Sunday evening. Now, this job is at the complete other side of Sheffield to where I lived. And I'm not expecting everybody to know Sheffield, but Stocksbridge is a place at the other side of Sheffield, right? And I live complete other end. So to get from my house to Stocksbridge is a 45-minute drive. So what did I do? I drove 45 minutes to the other side of Sheffield on a Sunday early evening. When I got there, it took me on average an hour to survey the loft correctly. So I spent an hour there surveying. It's now 7 p.m. I've got another 45-minute drive all the way back to the other side of Sheffield to get back home. So now I'm back home at 7:45. And knowing full well that she wanted to make a quick decision, I started to move work around and started to text a few of my employees that evening saying, can you go to this job, you go on that job, to free up half a day of my time so I could get the job priced and quoted and over to the customer the following day. So Monday comes, I finish half day on the job I were on because I'd moved work round. I went back home, and for me to quote a loft to include absolutely everything, every screw, I mean everything, used to take me 4 hours. So Monday afternoon, I spend 4 hours pricing this loft. I then spent another hour putting together the quote, the proposal, the estimate. I then raised the deposit for the invoice. I then went to my T's and C's and put all their customer details in, their address and the price and everything into my T's and C's, put the email together, and then I sent the email out on Monday evening with the price, the deposit and the terms and conditions. Now, I'm almost banking on this job coming in. So Tuesday came and passed, and I thought, right, I'm not gonna be desperate that I'm gonna ring them up Tuesday. What I'll do is I'll contact them on Wednesday and see if they've made a decision, bearing in mind they told me that they were gonna make a decision this week. So what did I do? I created another email on Wednesday and I sent that email out. I heard nothing back. Okay, they're probably busy. So Thursday, I thought, right, let me step it up a gear. I'm going to send a couple of text messages. So Thursday, ping, ping, sent a couple of text messages. Heard nothing back. Friday, I thought, flipping heck. Friday, I thought, right, I'm going to give them a ring. So I called, clicked onto answer machine. I thought, right, I'll leave it until Friday evening because they're probably busy at work. So I rung again on Friday evening. No answer. And I'm like, what the hell's going off here? I've just spent all this time and a Sunday evening putting this quote together quick because they wanted to make a quick decision. And they've ghosted me. They haven't even got the decency or the respect just to acknowledge my quote. Even if they didn't want to go ahead What's wrong with sending me a text message saying, Craig, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate you coming out on a Sunday evening. However, we've decided to go with somebody else. Nothing. Not a sausage. No message, no nothing. They ghosted me. And I'm thinking, how rude and ignorant is that? That us trades, we give up our valuable time to go and see potential customers. That's our time that's not being charged for. It's free time that we're doing to try and help them. Then we go away and put our prices together. Then we put the quotes together. Then we email them out to them. And people haven't even got the decency to acknowledge that they've received it. Never mind told you whether they want to go ahead or not. So now I'm absolutely fucking raging. And I'm like, this has got to stop. This has got to stop, Craig. It's no point in you constantly blaming and moaning and whining about your customers ghosting you or robbing you of your time when you're letting it happen. And nobody forced me to go out at Sunday evening to do that job. I agreed to it. Nobody forced me to change my diary on Monday. I made that decision. Nobody forced me to price the job and get it over quick. I made that decision. And you're making the same decisions where you're giving up your valuable time and spending it and investing it on people that should never be worthy of you giving up your time in the first place. You shouldn't even be going to look at that job, never mind price it, because they're not your target market. The time wasters and the tyre kickers. And I've not come across one trades or construction business owner that's not over time wasted an incredible amount of their time, effort and resources on people that just do not give a fuck about you and your business. All they want to do is use you for their own benefit, and you're letting this happen. And I'm telling you now, this has got to stop. Because while ever you're giving up your time for these time wasters and these tyre kickers that are going to ghost you, you're losing money. You're losing money. You're stressing yourself out because you haven't got enough time now to spend on the real areas of your business because you've been wasting that time on people that didn't deserve it in the first place. Do you get where I'm going with this? Now, let's just put this into some kind of context and let's look at that negative impact that had just had on my time and my money by giving up that time for this time-wasting, tyre-kicking customer, Mrs. Murphy, that didn't deserve my time in the first place. Let's just break this down, right? You had the time up that I'm going to share with you right now, right? So number one, I spent 10 minutes on a phone call that I didn't vet them on. I should have, but I didn't. I spent 10 minutes of my time on that initial phone call with that initial inquiry. What I then did is I invested 45 minutes to drive from one side of Sheffield to the other side to Stocksbridge. I then invested an hour, 60 minutes in their property doing the survey. I then invested 45-minute drive back from Stocksbridge to my house. I then spent half an hour on that Sunday evening moving jobs around and texting my team to swap jobs around to free up half a day of my time so I could price the job. The following afternoon on Monday, I spent 4 hours putting the price together. I then spent a further 60 minutes, a further hour, producing the proposal, sorting out the deposit and the terms and conditions. And then I then spent another hour following that up with emails, texts and phone calls to no avail. Now, when you add all that time up, it comes to 9 hours. 9 hours I've just given to someone and wasted 9 hours. Now, I want you to think about What is the cost to you and your business by you wasting 9 hours? And yes, I appreciate that you might be able to quote a job within half an hour. It might not take as long as what mine does, but you're still investing time into it. So how much time and what's the cost to your business by you ignoring these numbers? Well, let's break this down. Let's use me as an example. What do you charge per hour? And I appreciate that everybody's going to charge different rates depending on where they are in country, how big a business they are, because the bigger the business, the bigger the overheads, the more you've got to charge. I understand that. But let's just say that you charge, I don't know, £80 an hour or £120 an hour, right? So let's say in my case, it's £120 an hour. £129 an hour times 9 hours is £1,080. £1,080 of my time they've just had for free, and they didn't even have the decency to come back to me. Now, my mindset back then was, well, listen, Craig, you run your own business. You're expected to go out and work for free. You're expected to go out at whatever o'clock or Saturdays or Sundays or evenings to go and look at jobs. That's all part and parcel of running a business where you give your time up for free. Now, knowing what I know now, absolutely not. You are not working for free. Who on earth do you know who works for free? Nobody works for free. So your time has got to be factored in. And on my inner circle, when we go through cash and finance, we talk about and go through the numbers like this and working out actually all that time that you're spending quoting jobs that you don't win, that actually needs to be added in as an overhead. Likewise, if you're working outdoor, weather's been a bit pants recently, so maybe you're a roofer or a renderer or a landscape gardener, and you've got downtime down to poor weather. Well, you don't just say, oh, it's another day off work where I'm not earning. No, we look at how many days a year on average you're not working. We add that up, and then that is added into your overheads. So even when the downtime is happening, you're still getting paid. Now, if you're going out and giving your time for free willy-nilly, like I was with that old mindset of I need to put whatever hours in for free to win work, absolutely not. That's got to change. Now, let me hypothetically use this as an example, just to get my point across. If, let's say, for every loft conversion, it cost £1,080, right? That's 9 hours of time, which on average it did. So these are realistic figures. Let's say it's £1,080. And let's say that month I've been ghosted or 5 people didn't come back to me. That's 1,080 times 5 time wasters. That accumulates to £5,400 of time not accounted for and not allocated for, where I've worked for free and the business is not charging a penny. £5,400 a month, just if 5 people didn't come back to me. Now you times that per year, and that works out at £64,800 worth of time that's not being charged, that people have robbed me of, and I've not earned a single penny. Or to put that another way, that's 60 9-hour days wasted a year. That's 2 months full time wasted a year on time wasters and tire kickers. Now, if I could work out a way how to get rid of all them time wasters and tire kickers and replace them with pre-qualified leads that weren't going to mess me around, that means that I would have been able to invoice £64,800 worth of business because we'd have won the jobs. And on top of that, I'd have regained 60 working days. I'd have regained 2 months. Now, just imagine what positive damage you could cause in your own business if you had an extra 60 days to invest back into it. Now, I understand that not everyone is going to take 9 hours to quote a job. Not everybody's going to accumulate to 64,800 or 60 working days, but you're going to accumulate something, aren't you? What is the cost to you and your business by doing all this? So I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you're just being an absolute busy fool here, Craig. What do you need to do to start to get rid of these time wasters, get rid of the tire kickers, replace them with vetted customers where, all right, you might not win every single job from a vetted customer, but you're definitely going to increase your conversion rate and save time. So 20 years ago, I started building vetting forms and a vetting process where every single one of my leads, no matter where they came from, were all pushed to a vetting process. And if these potential customers couldn't be bothered to fill it in, then brilliant, goodbye, you're a time waster and a tire kicker. But for the ones that did fill it in and did give me the answers to the questions I was asking, that then allowed me to make an intelligent decision. Craig, are you going to give up your valuable time and money to go and contact this customer based on the information they've provided? Or when I look at that information, does it not fit the criteria that I were looking for? And as soon as I brought this vetting process in, which were a big mindset shift, by the way, particularly 20 years ago, when I brought all this lot in, my conversion rates went sky high. Yes, at that time, I wasn't looking at as many jobs, which were a little bit daunting because, again, I got to feed the beast. But the jobs that I did look at, I converted 80% of those jobs that I looked at. In other words, 8 out of 10 jobs that we quoted, I won. Why? Because I put a vetting process in place. So, Craig, how do you create a vetting form and a vetting process? Well, that's what I'm going to be teaching you in this chapter. Now, the first thing I want you to start to get to grips with is one of my, let's say, popular phrases that I have amongst particularly my inner circle members. And that is this: you must own all relationships with your customers or potential customers in your business. Because if you do not own the relationship, they're going to have you jumping through their hoops. When they say jump, they're going to expect you to jump. So the first thing I need you to start to get into your mindsets is, right, no longer am I going to hand the relationship and the reins to a potential customer or customer. I'm going to keep control of this relationship at every single step. Now, when you think about the process that we're going to go through now, this is the process of the first part of you forming a new relationship. In other words, you've got customers or potential customers and clients out there. You've got absolutely no idea who they are or where they're based. But the first point of contact with you is generally either through a form, an online form, maybe a contact us form, perhaps on your website, or through a phone call where they're going to give you a call and want to speak to someone. And what I'm saying is, right from that off, you have got to control the narrative and you've got to control that relationship. So whereas the example I gave you before, and this is only an example, by the way, where I said, Mrs. Murphy, when's it convenient for me to come and see you? You should never be saying things like that, or so have you jumping through whatever time frame suits them. You should be saying, these are the times I've got available to come and do a survey. Which one suits you? Are you with me? So take control of that relationship up front. Now, what I want you to do is go and check out episode number 8. Because this is so important that I've dedicated a full episode, and it's called Owning Your Relationships with Your Customers and Setting the Boundaries and the Rules of Your Game up front with your customers. So that at no point in that entire relationship should the ownership of that relationship be transferred over to your customer. You've got to maintain that relationship. Now, I want you to go and check that out at the end of this episode because it ties in with what we're about to share with you next. Now, the first thing I want you to do is imagine a funnel. So imagine a funnel where, I don't know, maybe you're topping your water up on your car engine, maybe for your wipers or on your van. And you put a funnel into your wiper container, and then the top of that funnel, you're going to pour liquid, water, screen wash. And what happens is the top of the funnel is really wide to capture as much of that liquid as possible. And then it narrows down right at the very end, and out at the bottom pops the liquid. I need you to consider a funnel, and what you're going to do as part of your marketing and your attract strategy is all the marketing that you're putting out there now is to attract your potential customers and your target market into the top of your funnel. So imagine your social media, your website, your paid ads, your lead magnets, your videos, your reels, everything, all the content that you're creating out there, magazine articles, radio advertising, leaflet dropping, all that lot is funneling people into the top of that funnel, into that wide spout at the top of the funnel. Now, when people get poured into the top of your funnel, you've got absolutely no idea who they are. They're just random strangers that have seen a post, that have seen a video, that have seen a magazine article, or picked up a leaflet that's been pushed through the letterbox, and you're sharing with them the products and services you offer and the problems and solutions that you can solve for them. And what they're going to do is they're going to come into that top of that funnel. Now, I want you to write down the next 4 things, because there are only 4 types of leads that can come in to your business. And I want you to write these down. Lead number 1 is what I call a time waster, right? And we've already established what one of them is. Lead number 2 is a cold lead. So this is somebody that might be interested in what you've got. They don't know you or they don't know your business, but they know that you've got something that can solve their problem. Number 3, these are warm leads. And these are people that have already done a bit of digging around, already done some investigating on the product and service, may have already checked you and your business out already. And then there's lead number 4, which is what I call pre-sold and ready to buy leads. And these are people that have been educated correctly with all of the content that you put out there, all of the content and the strategies I teach on this podcast and I share to my inner circle members. So they've already made the mind up that they want to buy from you because you've already educated them on things such as price, time scales within your marketing. So they've made the mind up that they want to use you regardless. Are you with me? Now, your job as a business owner and as a salesperson is to vet out all of the time wasters and all of the cold leads that are now in your funnel. Because we do not want to be working or spending any time with these time wasters and these cold leads, because that's how you're going to burn your money, make a loss, and give up your valuable time that we've already established many of us have not got to give up. So we've got to get rid of time wasters and cold leads in the top of that funnel. And one of the ways in which we're going to do this is through the vetting form that I'm going to come on to. Now, remember, the funnel's got a narrow spout at the bottom. So the only leads that we want dropping out of that funnel, in other words, the only leads that we're going to invest our time and attention into are warm leads and pre-sold ready-to-buy leads. So again, we're going to pour everyone in the top of your funnel. As they're going through the funnel, the vetting form is going to wean out the time wasters and the cold leads. And we're going to allow the warm leads and the pre-sold ready-to-buy leads filter the bottom of the funnel and drop out at the bottom. And they're the ones that we're going to be dealing with. And we're going to do all this through the vetting form and through a vetting process where we're going to be asking a series of questions up front that your target market that are all about to hit the top of your funnel have got to answer as they hit the top of the funnel. And if they answer these questions that you come up with, these questions are then going to determine whether they are a time waster and a cold lead or a warm lead and a pre-sold ready-to-buy lead. So the next part of this jigsaw puzzle is you're going to create a vetting form with these questions on. And this vetting form is going to be used in two ways. So make a note of these two ways. Number one, we're going to use that vetting form as part of the script that we say and ask people when they inquire by phone, right? So you will get phone call inquiries. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask that potential customer a set of vetting questions over the phone. And from that, we're going to make a decision whether they're a time waster or cold lead, or they're a warm or pre-sold ready-to-buy lead. Now, you may well be using a VA, a virtual assistant, to answer your calls, or you might have got a part-time or full-time admin person in your office. And if that's the case, that's great. But they're going to be going through your vetting form and they're going to be asking the questions. So number one, we're going to turn these questions into a script that are then asked to every single person that inquires. Number two, we're going to take them same questions and we're going to create an online vetting form where we're going to send all of the traffic to that vetting form, no matter where the lead comes from online. So whether that's somebody on your website, whether that's somebody who sends you a Facebook message perhaps on your business page, or any other social media DMs that you get, or whether that's a customer dropping you a text message or a WhatsApp message because they've been referred to them from a past customer that you've used. It doesn't matter. Anything to do with any type of lead online that doesn't come in via phone, we're going to push all that traffic over to a vetting form where they've got to go through the vetting form just to be able to get to speak to you. And if you do not follow what I'm sharing with you right now, you will become that busy fool wasting valuable time and working for free. And remember, Nobody works for free, and neither do you. Now, this is going to take a little mindset shift and a little bit of a different way of approaching your business, because if you've never thought of this before or done this before, again, it's the fear of the unknown. And oh, by the way, grab a notepad and pen and write this down. Fear doesn't exist, right? Let me tell you now, fear doesn't exist. And all fear stands for, write this down, is false expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. And the only thing that's going to stop you from putting this vetting form in place is you conjuring up this idea in your head that this is not going to work. This might have worked for you in a loft conversion and building company, Craig, but it'll not work for me as an heating engineer. It'll not work for me as an electrician. It won't work for me as a roofer, plasterer, scaffolder, landscaper. Well, let me tell you now, I've got hundreds of inner circle members that have been using this strategy for years. So it's you're the one that's been left behind through maybe having a fixed and closed mindset and this limiting belief that this is not going to work. This works in any industry, any sector, any trade, or any profession. So we've got to get into the groove of thinking, right, I've got to approach this in a different way. I need a growth mindset. Fear isn't real. It's just me conjuring up things in my head and these limiting beliefs telling me that this is either going to work or not going to work. Are you with me? And here's literally how I want you to start with this. Just get a Google Drive document or a Word document or a notepad and pen. It's as simple as that to start off with, because all we need to do to start off with is come up with the questions that you need to ask people, whether that be over the phone or on an online form, where the answers to those questions that these random strangers that are sat in the top of your funnel are going to provide you, so you can look at the answers to these questions and determine from the answers whether one, they're a time waster and a cold lead, or two, they're a warm and pre-sold ready to buy lead. Now, obviously, these questions will differ depending on your trade. So, for example, I'm a joiner by trade. So I'm going to be asking different types of questions on my vetting form that are relevant to my trade or the service that I'm providing. So if it's an electrician, you're going to be asking different questions to a joiner. If you're an heating engineer or a plumber, you're going to be asking different questions to an electrician. If you're a plasterer, you're going to be asking different questions to a plumber, electrician, and a joiner. Are you with me? You know your business the best. And you will know the types of questions that either one, you're consistently asking to try and extract information out of customers that you might ask over and over and over again. But two, I want you to really open your mindset up here to think about, do you know what? If I could only ask this question, it would give me this answer, and that is a real good indicator on where they are. So what questions might you want to ask? And let me share this with you now. Your vetting form will be a version 1. Just because I'm going to ask you to go away and set your first vetting form up. I'll come on to that shortly. But your vetting form won't be finished as soon as you send it live. Because over trial and error and asking these questions, you're going to realise, well, hang on a minute, if I'd have only asked that question, then I'd have got a better answer. And what you end up doing is you end up tweaking your questions as you go along. So I want you to think of this as being a version 1. And version 1 is better than version none. That's what I teach my inner circle members. We've got a starting point. We need to start somewhere. But once we've got the version 1 and we've got it up and running, we can start to look at it and start to tweak it as we go along. And, just being open and transparent with you here, my vetting form that I ask you to fill in if you want to apply for my inner circle, that's probably changed about 20 different times. And in all honesty, I'm about to change it again because I'm getting a bit tighter with the type of people that I want on my inner circle. So I'm going to be changing them again. So this is what I'm saying. Version 1, it's work in progress, right? And you might not have all the answers to all of your questions right now. You might be sat there thinking, well, I can come up with a couple or 2 or 3, Craig, but what else do I come up with? Well, you might not have got the answer to that yet, but when we get into this process and over the coming weeks and months, all this will start to become more apparent and you'll start to tweak and change your questions. So my first question to you is that, think of me now ringing you up. Whatever product or service or trade you're in, if you could ask me any questions whatsoever to determine whether I am a time waster or I am a pre-sold ready to buy customer for you, what questions are you going to write down that you want to ask me? Let me give you another example. Let's say you're what can we use? Renewable energy company, right? Let's say a renewable energy. One of the questions that you might want to ask on your vetting form is, how much are you currently paying for your electricity bill? Because obviously one of the big selling points of renewable energy is you're going to get their utility bills down. You're going to save them money. So maybe you need to know that up front. Let's take a heating engineer. And again, I'm not saying that you've got to ask these questions. I'm just trying to give you some examples. You might say, right, I could do with finding out with them what type of warranty they want. Do they want a 5-year, 10-year warranty? Because as we know, the bigger the warranty changes the price and moves the needle on the price of the boiler. You might want to ask, what manufacturer boiler do you want us to install? These are the options. Are you with me? Now that'll be relevant to a plumbing and heating engineer. It won't be relevant to a renewable company. Or maybe you're like me and you're a building contractor, right? You might want to ask a question such as, do you already have your architect's plans and drawings in place? Because we can't quote unless we've got them drawings. So if you haven't got them, you need to go and get them before you come to us. Are you with me? I'm just trying to give you examples of what I'm talking about here, about the many different questions you could ask. So version 1, I want you to write down all of the questions that you need to ask, either on the script over the phone or what's going to be on an online form that they are going to go away and fill in. Now, regardless of trade or product or service that you're offering, I believe there's always 2 questions that every single vetting form needs to have on it. So go back to what I've just shared with you now. Not everybody will ask a question, do you have the architect's drawings? That's no good, is it, for a plumbing and heating engineer? Likewise, as a building contractor, building lofts and extensions, me finding out what warranty boiler you want is no use to me. But what is use to you are the following 2 questions that you must be asking on the vetting form. Because arguably, these are the 2 most important questions. So make a note of these and let's explore these. And again, I want you to have a version 1 that you can tweak at any time moving forward. So these 2 questions revolve around number 1, and you've guessed it. I'm pretty sure you sat there going, I know what this one is, Craig. Come on, it's budget and price. You've got to get the budget and price out of them at this point. And if they don't want to give it you or they want to try and hide it, then, politely do one, right? Because we don't want to be working with you time wasters, do we? And tire kickers and cold leads. We don't want to be working with people like that. So number one, we're going to explore the budget question. Number two is time frames, time scales, right? Because again, what's the point of you going to look at a job? They might have got the budget and they might be our target market, but if they want it done next week and you're booked up for 3 months in advance and you can't do it, what's the point? So we're going to explore budget, price, and time scales, timelines of when they want the job doing. Because I believe this is relevant to every single trades and construction business. So let's explore these. Now, why ask for the budget in the first place? Well, come on, this has got to be self-explanatory, isn't it? The biggest objection on why people are not choosing you, the biggest one is price. It's budget, innit? Because there are people out there that are wanting cheap jobs doing as cheap as they can. They don't care about quality. They don't care about workmanship. They don't care about guarantees. They don't care about your overheads and that you've got a proper business that you're running and you've got overheads that need paying for. No, they just want something cheap and nasty. Just get it rammed in, right? And I'm guessing that you do not want to be working with those types of customers. There's a market for them, but it's not you. That's just a race to the bottom on price. So don't you think it's important that in this vetting process, we can extract a price or a budget figure from them that's going to sort of like determine what ballpark we're going to put them in? And if they choose a figure that's really low, and we start looking at these other questions, we can start to weigh up. Hang on a minute, there's something not adding up right here. This don't sit right with me. These ain't got the budget. They want it doing yesterday. They're 35 miles away. Nah, I'm not bothered. Are you with me? So we've got to get this budget, and we have to get the budget not to just discount people, but we need to get the budget because we can have better conversations with people when they give us the budget. We can find out exactly what it is they want. We can even, when I say this, I don't mean being unethical here, but I'm on about maybe upselling them to a better product or service that will solve their problem that they've got a lot better. And I'm not saying rip people off and take money off people for the sake of it. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you know that they've got a good budget, but they're looking at, let's say, this type of boiler, you know that if they've got that budget, they could have a far better boiler for that budget. And therefore, you could upsell the product or service to them to give them more value. Are you with me? So these are the reasons why we've got to get the budget at this point. I will not speak to anyone. You know, I've got another business called Leadzilla, which I work with many of you are, which is my marketing, automation and sales agency. You'll not even get a conversation with me or my team until we understand your budget. Because we'll be able to tell from your budget of, listen, Craig, we're interested in a website. How much are they? I said, okay, so what's your budget? Okay, his budget's $4,000. Right, we can't work with you then because our websites start from $6,500 upwards. Are you with me? Now, one of the questions a lot of my inner circle members have always said to me is, Craig, I'm a bit like apprehensive about asking for budget. And I'm like, why? Why? Because ultimately, this is a major factor and a major part of their decision process. So why not deal with it up front? Why bother waiting until you've had the conversation with someone, right? You've gone out and drove to the other side of Sheffield like I did. You've spent an hour there, a drive all the way back for an hour, 4 hours putting my price together, an hour putting the proposal estimate and T's and C's and deposit together. Half an hour chasing him up to find out that, Craig, you've quoted me 67 grand plus that for this loft. Yeah, that's right. Why? What were your budget? My budget was 25 grand. What? 25 grand? Are you serious? Are you serious? But that's what you're doing by not dealing with budget up front. Price, quotes, estimates, whatever you call it, it's got to be dealt with somewhere in that process, in that sales process. So why don't you get it out of the way and deal with it up front? And if that price doesn't fit their budget, move them on. Why bother wasting all that time like I did, 9 hours, going out and looking at a job to find out that they'd not got the budget? Do you get what I'm saying? So, people say to me, Craig, I don't like to ask for a budget because I believe and I think that if they tell me their budget, they're going to think that I'm going to put my prices up. Or they're going to think that, well, actually, I weren't going to charge them as much as that, but while they want to spend that, I might as well take the money off them. Listen, people, we are tarnished by that cowboy builder's tradesman's brush, aren't we? Everybody. But if in your marketing, you're educating people on this is how you work, this is our process, and you've got video testimonials of happy customers saying, do you know what? They weren't the cheapest, but I tell you something, they were the best. And they were open and they were transparent with the pricing and how they worked all the way through. When we start to educate people and we start to build that know, like, trust and confidence in them, we can have that conversation early doors about the budget. But what we don't want to do is we don't just want to say, hey, Mrs. Murphy, what's your budget? Because they're then going to think they're only asking me that to try and get more money or profit out of me, because that's what we are all tarred with. Every customer, or most of them, think that's the way we're going to go. So we never say, what's your budget? What a customer needs to understand is, why are you asking me for the budget? And if they can understand why you're actually asking them for it, it's like, oh, I get it now. I get the reason why they're asking me for the budget. And in actual fact, on the website, it tells me that they're going to take me through this process and we establish a budget up front. And I can also see on the website that their prices for boilers or their prices for rewires or their prices for extensions start from this price anyway. So you're being open and transparent with your prices. And I get the reason why you're asking me now for the budget. So now I'm happy to give it you. Are you with me? So what I want you to consider is when you're asking the question around budget and what's your price, whether that be over phone or whether that be on a vetting form, we're going to reword it slightly different. And we're going to tell them why we need the budget. Now, take what I'm going to say now and then change it to your business. I'm not saying this is the only way in which you can ask for price, but this is the way in which I suggest you ask for it that explains why you're asking. So write this down, but again, you put your own spin on it. I'm not saying it's the only way. So what I would be saying is, Mrs. Murphy, so we can provide you with the most competitive price that fits your specifications, so you get exactly what it is that you want, what price bracket does your budget fit into? Now think about what I've just said. I've explained why we're asking for the price, so we can provide you with the most competitive price that fits your specifications. We're telling them why we need the price. So what price bracket does your budget fit into? And when you ask a question like that, and you've been educating them on your website on how you work, and you've got maybe prices on your website, and you've got other customers saying you weren't the cheapest, but I'm telling you now, you were the best, people will then give you the price. Now, let me give you some tips on how you're going to deal with the remainder of this question. So number one, we've asked it in a different way that tells them why we're asking for the price. What I want you to do now, again, whether this is over the phone or whether this is on an online form, give them multiple options to choose from. Give them multiple price options to choose from. Don't just on an online form leave a box for them to fill in, because they don't necessarily know what to put in that box. They don't know what's the right answer or what's the wrong answer, and therefore you're putting an obstacle and you're stalling them from filling out that form or that question. What you need to do is you need to have maybe 3, 4 or 5 different price options that you give them. So let's say it's on a form. You could say, right, is it, let's take a solar PV company, seeing as though we've been using them as an example. You could say, right, so what price bracket does your budget fall into? And then is it 6,000 to 8,000? Maybe 8,000 to 10,000? 10,000 to 12,000? 12,000 to 15,000? Or 15,000 plus? Listen, I'm just coming up with figures off the top of my head here, okay, just to give you an example. Now, that way, they're looking at these 5 different options with different price brackets. That's making it easy for them to go, hang on a minute, they do them at 6 to 8 all the way up to 15 plus. Actually, I think we're going to be about in middle. Frank, just have a look at this. How much money are we prepared to invest into these solar panels? Well, Julie, we've got 10 grand. Okay, let's click the 8 to 10 or the 10 to 12. Are you with me? You're giving them an option and you're making it easy for them to click something. So if this was a website form, you would have a little checkbox at the side of each one of these options and they would just check it. But you only give them the option to check one box. And you make that question a compulsory to answer question. So in other words, if they try and skip to the next question, they can't because they haven't answered that one. And if you give them different options and you give them different price brackets, 9 times out of 10, they will select one. Likewise, if this is over the phone, Mrs. Murphy, so we can provide you with the most competitive price that fits your specifications, what price bracket does your budget fit into? Is it 6 to 8,000, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 15, or £15,000 plus? And then you just be quiet and let them tell you the answer. Think about this from again, let's use a heating engineer fitting a, let's say, domestic boiler. On your form, it could say, okay, we've got £2,000 to £2,500. We've got 2.5 to 3. We've got 3 to 3.5. We've got 3.5 plus. Again, I'm just coming up with some random figures here. Or go back to me being a building contractor, doing maybe extensions or loft conversions. I could say, well, my single story extensions actually start at minimum 40 grand. Okay, so I could have 40 to 60,000, 60 to 80,000, 80 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 grand plus. Are you with me? So this is how you deal with people giving you the budget figure when it comes to price. And what I would do is I would set the lowest figure at the lowest point that you know that you would be prepared to fit solar panels, let's say on a 3-bedroom semi. Or if I were the heating engineer, it's right, what's the smallest type of boiler I fit? Might be in a 2-bedroom terraced with 1 bathroom. Right, what's the most lowest price that I'd normally go to for something like that? If I were a building contractor, again, smallest jobs might be a very single, bog standard, single story, little extension. Right, they start from 40 grand. That's where you start. And then you go up from that point. And again, make sure that you have that as a compulsory question that needs to answer so they can't skip forward. And if you do that, 9 times out of 10, they will give you the answer that you're looking for to budget. Now, I said that there were 2 questions that I believe everybody needs on the vetting forms. And the second one is timescales, right? Because we need to understand what their timescale is for obvious reasons. Listen, they might tick all the boxes that suggest that they are the ideal target market for you, that they're a warm lead, and they tick the right budget figure. But if they tick that they want it doing next week, next month, or within 3 months, and you're fully booked up, you can't physically fit it in. Now, I know what some of you will start to say. Yeah, but Craig, if they've got the budget, I'll make it work. And this is where you're going to start trading your time for money. Because right now, you're already busy and you're already not getting everything done that you need to get done for most of you in the time that you've got available now. So how can you start shoehorning jobs in when you haven't got time to do it? You shoehorning a job in means you're going to have to let somebody else down. And why should they be let down? And why should your customer service levels drop because you're trying to shoehorn people into a slot that doesn't exist? You've got to start, as a business owner, you've got to start saying no to yourself, because while ever you keep nodding your head and shoehorning jobs in, or trying to rearrange things, or let's work an extra weekend, or let's put some late night shifts in, that's going against everything that we're teaching you here. This is all about building freedom in your business and freedom in your life. And you working a Saturday, ignoring your family on a Saturday, or not taking your son or daughter to their activity on a Saturday because you've shoehorned a job in because you can make an extra 700 quid, that's defeating the object of what we teach you at the Trades Freedom Club. This is all about building time and financial freedom. So you've got to get out of trading time for money. Are you with me? So we need to understand what these time scales are. But again, there's a way in which we ask for this. And it's a little bit easier, isn't it, than asking for the budget, because you're literally saying, basically, when do you want the job doing? So here's how I want you to phrase this question. And there's a number of different ways in which we can do it. And again, I'm not saying that these are the be all and end all, because they're not. But here's how I would phrase it. Let me give you an example. How soon are you looking for your solar panels being fitted? Or how soon are you looking for your boiler to be fitted? Or if it's a building contractor, or maybe, let's say, a landscaper, perhaps, how soon do you want your project starting? So when we ask the question, and every question team on your vetting form has to start off with what, when, why, where, who, or how. Because when you ask a question that we call an open-ended question, people have to give you an answer. So, how soon are you looking for your solar panels fitting? How soon do you want your project starting? They've got to give me an answer. They can't give me a yes or no answer when I ask an open-ended question. And again, I want you to give multiple choice answers here, as in timescales. So let's go back to the example of a solar PV company. It could be, how soon are you looking for your solar panels fitting? And it could be an option of 4 to 8 weeks, 6 to 12 weeks, 12 to 16, 16 to 26, 26 weeks plus. It's entirely up to you what you put down. You know your business better than anyone. I'm just giving you examples. Or let's turn his attention to that heating engineer that's now fitting these boilers. Now, clearly, if somebody's boiler's on the blink or is packed up, they don't want to have the same type of time frames as the solar PV, which started off with, in my example, 4 to 8 weeks. I mean, who wants to go 4 to 8 weeks without a boiler? So, as a heating engineer, you might have immediately as your first answer. It could then be 1 to 2 weeks, or 2 to 4 weeks, or 1 to 3 months, because they can't afford it just yet. They know it's on its way out, but they're due a bonus from work in a couple of months' time, or it could be 3 months plus. Are you with me? So your time frames are down to suit you and your trade and your business. Likewise, let's go back to the building contractor example, building extensions. You're not going to have immediately, are you? I mean, who can start a 12-week build immediately? So a building contractor might have, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months. And as we know, building contractors can get booked up like a year in advance, like we were. We were always booked up 9 months in advance. But that's because our jobs might take 9, 10, 11, 12, 16 weeks for one job. And you might be booked up. So I want you to consider what's time frames that you're going to put down on your vetting form, along with the budget figure and along with any other questions that you can ask that's going to determine and give you the answers of whether they are worth giving up your time for or not. Now, these vetting forms don't just stop here. Because depending again on your trade, there's other types of questions that you could probably get answered or information, again, that's going to help you. So let's look at measurements. Have you got a trade where somebody can put in measurements? Maybe you're a plasterer and you've got an inquiry through to skim somebody's bedroom ceiling. Right. Can you have something in there that says measurements? What's the sort of like width and length of your ceiling? Or maybe you're a renderer and you're saying, right, how many square meters is your house that needs rendering? And they might be able to put the square meterage in. Maybe you're a tiler and you're tiling a bathroom. You might want to say how many square meters of floor tiles are required. How many square meters of wall tiles? Are you with me? So you might be able to put measurements on. Could be an extension. Right, what size single story extension do you want putting on back of your house? Well, I want to come out 3 meters and I want to go full 8 meter width. Right, it's 3 by 8. Also, what about any type of drawing or documentation that they could upload into your vetting form? So our vetting forms that are all built inside Leadzilla, you can have an upload button. So you can upload maybe architect's drawings or your structural calculations or your planning permission approval notice. So some of you will need drawings uploading that you can work from. Maybe you're a kitchen fitter and they've already got a kitchen home being mapped out by Howdens or whoever they're using, and they've got all the drawings. Right, you'd want to see what that kitchen and dimensions and the design of the kitchen is like. So they could upload the drawings through your vetting form. That's going to help you make that decision. Another one is photos. I'm pretty sure that just about every one of you could get photos. So maybe you are a window company fitting doors and windows. Right, take a photograph at of all elevations showing your windows and your doors from outside. Let's have a look at what you've got now. Maybe you're a Sparky and you want to see where their consumer unit is currently fitted if you're going to be doing a consumer unit swap, fuse board swap. Maybe you are that plumbing and heating engineer and you want to see a photograph of the boiler, where the flue exits. You might want to see any tanks. You might want to see the controls. You can get them to take photos and upload them through your vetting form. So when you start to think about what we can add into a vetting form, imagine if you could get all the information that you're asking for, plus the budget, plus the timescales, plus any measurements, plus any drawings, or if you didn't need measurements and drawings and you were just that plumbing and heating engineer, getting the boiler where it is now, where the flue exits, where the tanks are, where the thermostats and the controllers are. If you could get all that lot and you know that it's a 3-bed semi that you're putting this into and they want an Ideal or a Worcester Bosch boiler and they want a 10-year guarantee, come on. You could almost price the job there and then without actually going out to see it. And that's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of getting this vetting form completed. Let's first of all establish, are you a time waster and are you a cold lead? Yes, they are. Right. Goodbye. Okay, that's leaving us now with warm leads and pre-sold ready to buy leads. Right. Now we're talking. But the next part of this process is, what do we do when somebody's completed the vetting form, Craig? What's the next part of this process? What's the next part of this sales vetting process? How do we take it to that next level? Well, you're now armed with all the right questions and you've already started to put a budget figure together in your head. Again, if you're that heating engineer, it's easy for boilers, isn't it? Maybe it's that consumer unit swap and it's fairly easy. Maybe you're that solar company and you've now got dimensions of the roof. You've now got photos of the internal elevation of the loft. You've now got photos of all elevations around where scaffolding's going to go to put your solar panels on. You know where the consumer unit is. You know what their energy bills are. You know what the budget is. You know what the time frame is. Come on, you could almost price that job off that information. So the idea behind this is not just to vet people out. It's the information that you take where you're now going to put a more realistic budget figure together for them. Because the next part of this process is, at some point, you've got to give them a call. And you need to speak to this potential customer. And what you're not going to do is you're not going to just ring them and say, thanks for filling out our form. When's convenient for me to come and see you? Because now you're dancing to their tune. No. What we do is, with all the information that we've collated, we're going to look at that job and we're going to go, right, based on everything, I need to put a budget figure together. And you might say, well, Craig, this job could come in between this and this price. Right, that's okay. That's okay. If it's £2,000 to £2,500 for that boiler, or whether that's 60 to 70,000 for that extension, we need to pull together a price. Because what we're now going to do, before we give up any valuable time in booking a home or site surveying, is we're going to ring Mrs. Murphy up and we're going to say to Mrs. Murphy, thank you so much for completing our survey form, right? We've now got all the information that you've sent us through. And what I want you to do is write this down, right? What I'm going to say next. And again, adapt it for your own business. And I'm not saying this is the only way of getting this across. But what I'm saying is, it's a good way of starting. And I'd be saying something like this. Mrs. Murphy, thanks for completing our form. We've got all this information from you. Now, we are incredibly experienced in fitting loft conversions. In fact, Mrs. Murphy, We've done over 300 loft conversions in Sheffield alone. And we've been fitting lofts out for the last 20 years. Now, with all that experience and with all the information that you've kindly sent through to us, I've got a budget figure for you of what to be expecting should you decide to employ us to do your loft conversion. Would you be happy for me to share that with you? Yes, Craig. Okay, Mrs. Murphy, based on everything you've sent over, we estimate, and don't hold us to this, it's just an estimate at this time. We estimate that your loft conversion is going to be between £65,000 and £75,000 plus that. And for that, you are going to get, and then you list out all the benefits. Now, Mrs. Murphy, I know we're a way off at this moment in time, but if you did decide to work with us, the estimated time of us being able to start your project would be this day at this time. How would you like to proceed? And then you just zip it. Because what you've done there, in saying something like I've just shared with you now, you're basically saying that you're incredibly experienced and you've fitted over 300 lofts. Now, you put this, you change the numbers to your business. We've fitted over 10,000 solar panels. We've fitted over 500 boilers, right? Over X amount of time. In my case, because I've been established in business for 30 years, I can put 20 odd years into it, right? It's all building credibility. So what you're doing is you're building credibility, you're giving them a budget figure, and you're giving them an estimated time on when you could start their job or fit their boiler or install their solar panels and battery. And then you're going to leave it with a closing question of how would you like to proceed? And then you be quiet. And then it's over to Mrs. Murphy to then say, well, Craig, do you know what? It's about our budget. You've been incredibly professional. We've had all the automated emails and texts. You've been amazing at what you do. You come highly recommended. I can see all your video testimonials on your website. I can see the 1,000 5-star reviews you've got on Google. It fits within budget. So it sounds something like we'd want to continue down this process. What happens next, Craig? And at that point, then you would say, okay, Mrs. Murphy, remember you're owning the relationship. Mrs. Murphy, what I'm going to do, I can either give you some times and dates now on when I can come out and do a home survey, or if you preferred and it were more convenient, I can send you a link via email and text to our home survey calendar where you can then choose a time that we've got available for us to come out and do the home survey. Which would you prefer? And then it's up to you. She either books it in there and then under your time frames of when you're going to go out and look at the job, not hers. Or she'll say, well, I need to speak to my husband, Frank. If you can send me a link over via email and text, I'll check with Frank and then we'll book it in online. Or the other option, the other end of the spectrum is, Craig, thank you so much. We've been giving it some thought, and actually those prices that you've just quoted us are slightly over budget. And in all honesty, we'd need it doing quicker than that. Brilliant. Again, it's the second part of the vetting process to vet those people out at that stage, which is why we've got to be dealing with budgets and timescales early on in this sales process rather than leaving it right until the very end. Now, when I'm working with my inner circle members, helping them put all these vetting forms and processes together, The question always crops up, Craig, I get all this now and I'm going to go away and create a version 1. However, what software and where the hell do I start building out these vetting forms? How does it work and where do I need to go? So let me just give you some advice on what I think you need to do to go away and pull these vetting forms together. Option number 1 is if you speak to your existing web designer, right, they will be able to build you a form, particularly if you've got a WordPress website. They'll be able to build you a form that puts all these questions on and even allows you to upload photos or measurements and drawings and things like that into your website or into this vetting form page that then will come into the back end of your website and they'll be able to do that for you. Now, the slight downside to that is I like to ask one question at a time, right? So you ask a question and then once they've completed that, it moves on to the next question. So all they're actually seeing is one question at a time. Now, I'm not saying building it out on your website with your web designer won't work, because it will, but the likelihood is they would have to put all of your questions on one page, which means when a potential customer clicks the link, maybe in an email or text that you've just sent them, to go and fill out their vetting form, when they click that link, it opens up and there might be 10 questions on there that you want them to answer. Now, from experience, and this was the only option available years ago when I started this, but from experience, when somebody looks at maybe 10 questions in a one-off go, that can sometimes look overwhelming. Even though it's not, it can do to them, and they can look at it and possibly think, flipping heck, it's going to take me 5 minutes to fill that lot out. I can't be bothered, right? So I've got some inner circle members that do have all the questions on one form because it's version 1, remember. We can always improve it. But for those that have moved on to, let's say, version 2 or version 3 or version 4, what they've done is they've upgraded and they've now built all their vetting forms out inside Leadzilla. And Leadzilla is a full-blown marketing, automation and sales software where you can build out websites, landing pages, funnels, vetting forms, survey forms, trigger automated emails and text messages when anybody's gone through your website or your vetting form. It does all of that for you, all in one place. So if you want to take it to another level, maybe version 2, then check out Leadzilla, and the link to start your 14-day free Leadzilla trial is in the show notes and the description to this episode. Now, the benefits of going over to Leadzilla are you can ask one question at a time. So if you go on to any of my vetting forms for any of my businesses, you'll see that I ask one question. When you submit the answer, the second question pops up. So all you're seeing is one question at a time, so it doesn't appear overwhelming. Also, by using Leadzilla, you can add in what we call conditional logic. And what I mean by conditional logic is you can send a potential customer down a certain path or a certain route depending upon whether they've answered yes or no to a question, or they've ticked a certain budget or a certain time frame, could then send them down a different path where you ask them a series of different questions. It can also stop people in the tracks from going any further. So let's say, for argument's sake, it's budget and somebody clicks a really, really low budget. and they've submitted drawings that look like they want a mansion building, let's say, if you're a builder, but the budget's only 30 grand. Conditional logic will pick up that, hang on a minute, they've told us that they want a mansion building, but on the budget, they've only clicked 30 grand. It's never going to be possible. So instead of carrying them on down the questions route, we can get it so it pops up and says, I'm really sorry, but based on the information you've provided and the budget that you've selected, we can't help you in this instance. And it stops them. Do you get me? Now, good place to start, like I said, is your web designer builds you new a form that allows people to fill the answers in and uploads the images. Putting that on steroids and bringing conditional logic into it, I would strongly suggest that you start your 14-day free trial to Leadzilla and go and build out all your vetting forms inside Leadzilla. Now, some pro tips for you to bear in mind. And I'm going to quickly share 5 pro tips. And this is all through my experience of building vetting forms out for the last 20 years. Number 1, you need a vetting form for each service that you offer. Now, don't get overwhelmed. Don't freak out. Hear me out. Let's take a trade such as the plumbing and heating engineer. And let's say the only thing that they offered were boiler installations, boiler servicing, boiler breakdown, and maybe care plans. Let's just go with M4. Let's forget about leaky taps, fitting stop taps, and toilet seats. Let's forget about that. Let's just go for the first 4. If you were to try and build a vetting form that had all 4 of them services in it, there'd be far too many questions that you would need to ask. Because the questions around the boiler installation are going to be different questions that you need to ask around the boiler repair or the boiler breakdown. Completely different set of questions. So if you're trying to build one vetting form that's generic, that's going to try and encompass all of the different services that you do on one vetting form, you're going to end up with too many questions that need answering, and that is definitely going to start to overwhelm people. So having one vetting form in this example for boiler installations, and having all the questions specific to boiler installations, people will fill it in. Having a separate vetting form for maybe boiler breakdowns. Having a separate vetting form for boiler servicing. Having maybe a separate vetting form for care plans, perhaps. You need to make sure that each service has a different vetting form. One more example, an electrician. If an electrician that were MCS accredited had one form, on that form, it'd have everything from putting first and second fix, maybe sockets and switches and downlights and smoke alarms and things like that for builders. It would also encompass rewires for domestic users. It would almost encompass just consumer unit changes. It may almost bring in battery storage, solar panels, EV charging points. Do you get me? It's too much. By breaking them down into individual vetting forms, anybody that then inquires about a solar EV charging installation point, right, the questions that we ask when we on the phone with that customer are dedicated and specific to EV charging points. Likewise, the Facebook message that we get through our business page saying, can you give us a price for an EV charging point? We're based in Sheffield. You would then send them a link to the vetting form solely for EV charging points. That way they're going to fill it out. Now, what I'm saying is here, tip number 1 is start with what is your most popular and most profitable service that you offer? And build a vetting form as a version 1 for that product and service only. Then when you see it in action and you see it working and your conversion rates are going up and you're not wasting as much time and you see it all in action, you'll then go, this is amazing. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to go and build out another vetting form for this service. Please don't try and sandwich everything you do onto one vetting form because it won't work. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2. Consider building out automations that are sat behind the vetting form. So in other words, when you fill out any of my vetting forms, as an example, as soon as you filled it in, you'll get an automated email, you'll get an automated text. And what that will have in it is a video of me thanking you for completing that particular vetting form. Let's say it's Leadzilla, and let's say it's around websites. You will get an automated email and text back that's specific to websites. And in that email, there'll be a video. And in that text, there's a video of me explaining what happens next. So I'm explaining to you, now you fill this in, this is what's going to happen next. Great customer service. Likewise, if it's the inner circle, completely different business. But if it's the inner circle that you fill out, you'll get an automated email and a text from that vetting form with a video of me explaining what's going to happen next. But it's solely for inner circle. So you get automated emails and texts, but likewise, we, i.e. me and my team, we also get automated emails and texts the second that you've completed that form. Because we know and understand from a sales point of view, we can't be having your emails and text messages and WhatsApp messages just sat in our inbox for 3 weeks before we get back to you, because that's not good sales. That's not good customer service. So we want to know the second anyone fills out a vetting form, my team get a text message and they get an email saying, Joe Bloggs has filled it out. This is a list of all their answers. Quick, ring them now because they're hot, they're juicy, they're in the moment. They're ready for taking to that next level. You need the same. So have that automation sat behind it. Tip number 3. Once you've spoken to your customer, and the outcome is either I am going to now give up my valuable time to come out and survey your job because you've given me the information, I've called you, I've given you a budget figure of how much the job will cost, I've let you know my timescales, and you're still interested. Only at that point will then you go and do the home or site survey. So again, to keep the customer service and the professionalism moving along, you either want to book them in there and then for that survey, perhaps while you've got them on the phone, that then triggers an automated email and text message with a video of you explaining what's going to happen when you attend to do their survey. And it's going to then trigger automated reminder emails and texts reminding the customer that you're doing this survey so they don't forget. Or you come off the phone, you click one button in Leadzilla, and that one button that you click automatically triggers an email and a text message to that customer with a link for them to choose the date and time that suits them. But you've got them all set out. Are you with me? You've already set the dates and times where you're available to do home or site surveys. And then they book it in themselves, and then they get the automated emails and texts with a video of you thanking them for booking that home survey. And here's what happens next. Tip number 4. Do not call this a vetting form. me and you are talking about a vetting form because we're business people and we get what we're doing and we get the strategy behind vetting out time wasters and tire kickers. And, it's not a very nice term, that, is it? But let's face it, that's what people become. So us business owners, we can have that conversation and we know what we mean by vetting forms, but you would never, ever, ever say to a customer or a potential customer, fill out my vetting form, right? Because that's going to rattle them. They're going to go, what? You're vetting me? What information do you need to find out about me then? Why are you vetting me? It's a bit like invading my personal space, right? Never call it a vetting form. Let me give you some tips on what you might want to call it, right? That's a bit more pleasant, right? Number one, you on your website, you could have a big section on your website and then it says get a free quote. So let's take the boiler installation. They're on your boiler installation page on your website. So that's the service that they're going to fill the vetting form out for. You won't have a button that says click here and fill out our vetting form. You might have a button that says get a free quote. And when they click that, it sends you over to the vetting form, but we don't call it that. We say get a free quote. That's the call to action. Or you might want to call it a project questionnaire or a job questionnaire. Or you might want to call it a free survey form. Are you with me? You put your own spin on what you want to call it. I'm just telling you not to market it as a vetting form. Tip number 5, and your final tip. And that is this mindset shift on how you are approaching the new strategies that I share in all of my podcasts. Because I'm sure right now, you might have got to the end of this episode and you might be thinking, flipping heck, Craig, I get all this. This is amazing. Why ain't I already done this? Right? Well, you don't know what you don't know. That's why I'm here, to give you the knowledge. But you might be sat here now going, flipping heck, Craig, this sounds a bit like hard work. I've got to come up with questions. I don't know what I'm doing with tech. I'm not tech savvy. My web designer's shy. I can't even get hold of them. I don't even know where they are anymore. They've gone out of business. All these things could be hitting you as limiting beliefs on why you can't do this. But listen, all I'm asking you to do is write a series of questions on a piece of paper, create a form, and then from that form, you're going to get some information. That information, you ring the customer up, you give them a budget figure and time frames, and that's it. That's when you break it down, that's exactly what this episode is all around. So this is not mega complicated, even though you might be sat here thinking this sounds like hard work. Trust me, it's really not. And if you want to put a post into our Trades Freedom Club Facebook group and community, asking people to share the link to their vetting forms, which many of my Inner Circle members will share their vetting forms with you because their mindset now is they want to become mentors. They want to help you to improve your business and your life. That's the whole culture within the Trades Freedom Club. Put a post in Trades Freedom Club group saying share a link to your vetting forms, and can I have a look at them? And I've listened to Craig's podcast episode number 36, and I'm just a bit like, I just need to know more. Do it. Whatever we can do to help and you support you on your journey, we'll do. However, you've got to be able to help yourself first. So none of this is complex, none of it's complicated, none of it's going to take you like months and months to pull together. My Inner Circle members, within literally a day or two of us finishing our full day 9-hour coaching session on this, within a day or two, they're up and running with the vetting forms, and it's a version 1. So please don't get overwhelmed with what I'm sharing with you on any of these episodes. So here are your action tasks. Number 1, you're going to write down the questions, even if it's just in a notepad with a pen. Just get the questions down. Number 2, you're going to find some software, or you're going to go to your web designer and you're just going to literally put all these questions onto a form. Number 3, if you are in a position to build some automation out behind the scenes, then let's build that automation where people get automated emails and texts. But if you're not, it doesn't matter. Remember, this is version 1. Then once you've completed your vetting form, you need to put that into a script that anybody that's answering your phones, whether it's you, an admin person or a VA, they've got to have the script because they need the questions that they need to be asking on your behalf. Or 2, once it's all built and you've got it on a URL link, that link then is shared with everybody that contacts you other than by phone, because the script's going to do that. But anybody who contacts you via email, text, WhatsApp, social media DMs, anybody who contacts you, you send them a nice message or email back saying, look, here's a link to our, don't call it vetting form, remember, our free survey form. All you need to do is click the link, answer a couple of questions. That will give us a bit more information about what it is that you're looking for, and then a member of our team will come back to you within the next 24 hours. And then everybody gets sent that link. So they're your action tasks from this episode. And just a quick reminder that the link for you to join our members priority waiting list for what we're unleashing in January is in the show notes and description to this episode. Likewise, if you're not already a member of our free Trades Freedom Club Facebook group and community, we'd love to have you on board. It's a safe and thriving group, positive group, that's just absolutely rammed full of trades and construction business owners that are all helping and supporting each other on their journey to achieving time and financial freedom. And remember, the business is never the problem. The problem is always the mindset of the business owner. So I'll catch up with you on next week's episode, and I'll meet you at the top. Thank you.